Planter bought pregnant bondwoman for pennies, but what she does leaves him in shock. Silas Harrison was desperate. The debts of the coffee estate in the interior of Virginia were suffocating him, and he needed cheap laborers to save the property he had inherited from his father. At the city auction, when he saw that young pregnant black woman being offered for a few dollars, he thought he was making the worst deal of his life. That's when she raised her eyes for the first time. Silas felt a strange shiver at that determined look, as if she knew something he didn't. The young woman's name was Hattie, and she seemed to be about 25, her belly already quite round with pregnancy. The other buyers weren't even interested, thinking a pregnant bondwoman would just be a burden. "She's going to be trouble, Mr. Silas," murmured Caleb, his foreman. "A pregnant woman can't handle heavy work." But Silas had already made his offer. $5. Hattie was his for a price that would barely buy an old horse. As he took her to the estate on the wagon, she remained silent, but her eyes observed everything around her with an attention that unsettled him. In the first few days, Hattie worked in the manor house, helping with household chores under the stern eye of Mrs. Abigail, Silas's wife. The lady of the house was a cold woman of 40 who treated the workers harshly, but something about Hattie made her uncomfortable. "That woman gives me chills," Abigail confessed to her husband. "She looks at things as if she understands something we don't understand." Silas shrugged, too worried about the bills to pay attention to his wife's fears. The estate was doing badly. Rains had been scarce and creditors were already threatening to take his lands. Little did he know that the solution to his problems was walking silently through the hallways of his own home. Hattie observed everything, the way the plants in Mrs. Abigail's garden died from lack of proper care, the constant headaches that tormented the planter, the persistent cough that had plagued Silas for months and which no city doctor could cure. She saw, but she remained silent. One morning, while sweeping the terrace, Hattie noticed Mrs. Abigail collapsed on the living room floor unconscious. She screamed for help, and soon Silas came running, desperate. The woman had fainted and wouldn't wake up, even with slaps on the face and the cold water they threw on her. "Fetch Dr. Bennett from town, hurry!" shouted Silas. The doctor arrived 3 hours later, an elderly man who examined Mrs. Abigail with a worried expression. She had woken up, but was very weak and pale, complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath. "I don't know what it could be, Mr. Silas. Her heart is beating too fast, but I see no signs of a specific illness. I'll prescribe a tonic, but—" The doctor shook his head without much hope. Hattie, who had stayed close throughout the entire consultation, finally spoke up. "Excuse me, sir, may I make a suggestion?" Everyone turned to her, surprised. Silas was about to tell her to be quiet when she continued. "The lady has high blood pressure. I know teas that can help." Dr. Bennett laughed with disdain. "Negro superstitions. This is serious business, young lady." But Silas, seeing his wife's fragile state and with no other options, hesitated. Mrs. Abigail groaned softly in bed, growing paler by the minute. "What kind of tea?" he asked, going against the doctor's disapproving gaze. "Olive leaf, lemon balm, and a few other plants. My grandmother taught me. She used to heal the mistresses of the estate where I was born." Silas looked at his ailing wife and made a decision that would change everything. "Show me these plants." Hattie led Silas through the backyard, pointing out different herbs that grew right there, some considered weeds by the other workers. With her skilled hands, she prepared a mixture that gave off a soft, comforting aroma. "Half a cup in the morning and half in the afternoon," she instructed. "In 3 days, you'll be feeling better." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Mrs. Abigail drank the tea reluctantly, wrinkling her nose at the bitter taste. But the next morning her breathing was easier. On the second day the chest pains subsided. On the third day she managed to get up and walk around the room. Dr. Bennett returned a week later and couldn't believe what he saw. "This is impossible. How did she recover so quickly?" Silas looked at Hattie, who remained discreetly in the corner of the room. It was the tea Hattie prepared. "Charlatanism," the doctor protested. It must have been a natural improvement. But Silas was beginning to see Hattie in a new light. That very same week, When one of the field hands badly cut himself with an axe, it was she who stopped the bleeding with a paste made of crushed herbs. The wound healed without getting infected, something rare on the estate. Word of Mrs. Abigail's miraculous cure began to spread through the surrounding area. First came the women from neighboring estates, arriving discreetly to ask for help with their ailments. Hattie saw to all of them, always with humility, never charging anything. Silas realized he had something valuable in his hands. He started charging for Hattie's treatments, $5 per consultation, $10 for more serious cases. The money coming in helped pay off the estate's debts. "You'll only see whoever I authorize," he told Hattie, "and all the money stays with me." She simply nodded in agreement, but her eyes held secrets Silas didn't suspect. During the consultations, Hattie memorized every medicinal plant she found on the neighboring properties. At night, when everyone was asleep, she walked through the backyard gathering rare seeds, storing them in small cloth pouches hidden in her cabin. The pregnancy progressed, but Hattie remained active and strong. The other women on the estate began seeking her out too, not just for healing, but to hear her advice on childbirth and baby care. She had helped deliver many children and knew exactly what to do. "How did you learn all this?" Silas asked one morning, curious. "My grandmother Clara was a midwife and healer. She used to say that knowledge can't be kept for yourself. You only teach it to those who promise to pass it on." "And do you teach anyone?" "I teach whoever needs to learn," she replied with a half-smile that left him intrigued. Silas didn't know, but Hattie had begun organizing secret meetings with the other women of the estate. During the afternoons, when the men were out in the fields, they gathered in the nearby woods to learn about medicinal plants and healing techniques. Hattie taught everything she knew, creating a silent network of knowledge. Hattie's fame reached the ears of Colonel Arthur Sterling, a wealthy landowner in the region who controlled several coffee estates. He showed up at Silas's property on a Sunday afternoon, with his luxurious carriage and fine clothes. "I heard you have a bondwoman healer who works miracles," said Sterling without beating around the bush. "I want to buy her." Silas felt his heart race. The colonel was known for paying very well when he wanted something. "She's not for sale, Colonel. I'm offering $5,000. That's enough money to settle all your debts." $5,000? It was a fortune. Silas looked at the house, where Hattie worked in silence, and then at the pile of debt papers stacked on his desk. "I need to think." "You have until Thursday. After that, the offer no longer stands." That night, Silas couldn't sleep. $5,000 would solve all his financial problems, but he had come to depend on Benedita's treatments to generate income, and she was pregnant, about to give birth. The baby would also be his property. The next morning, he looked for Benedita in the backyard, where she tended her small garden of medicinal plants. "Colonel Sterling wants to buy you." She stopped weeding and stared at him with those piercing eyes. "And are you going to sell me?" "The money is very good. It would settle all my debts." "And my baby?" "He would be born on the colonel's estate." Benedita lowered her head, but Silas noticed she showed no surprise, as if she already knew this moment would come. "May I ask something, sir?" "Go ahead." "Let me stay until the baby is born. After that, you do whatever you think is best." Silas agreed, thinking it would be the most prudent course, but he had no idea that Benedita had already begun putting into action a plan she had been devising for months. That very afternoon, while Silas went to town to take care of business, Benedita gathered all the women of the estate in the woods. It was a different kind of meeting. There was urgency in her voice. "You know I may have to leave soon. That's why I need to teach you everything I know about the most important plants. Each of you will keep seeds and tend to your own medicinal garden." The women listened to her in silence, understanding the gravity of the situation. Martha, a 50-year-old woman who worked in the kitchen, was the first to speak. "We're not going to let you leave, Benedita. We're all a family here. Sometimes we don't have a choice, Martha, but the knowledge I pass on to you will remain. And one day, when I'm no longer here, you'll teach it to your daughters and granddaughters." Benedita spent the rest of the week intensifying her teachings. She showed them how to identify each plant by its smell, the texture of its leaves, the color of its flowers. She taught them recipes for cough syrups, poultices for wounds, teas for headaches, and stomach problems. "This one here is pennyroyal," she said, pointing to a small herb. "It's for women's ailments, and this is stonebreaker, good for the kidneys. Keep it well in your memory." The women absorbed every word as if it were gold. They knew they were learning something precious, knowledge that could save lives. On Thursday, Colonel Sterling returned for an answer. Silas received him in the main room, nervous and indecisive. He had spent the whole week thinking about what to do. "So, Silas, do you accept my offer?" "I do, Colonel, but with one condition. She's about to give birth. Let the baby be born here, and then she'll go with you." "Perfect. When is the birth?" "Within the next 2 weeks, by her calculations." Sterling smiled with satisfaction. He had heard that Benedita was not only a healer, but also an excellent midwife. Having a bondwoman with those skills would be a valuable investment. "I'll send my men to pick her up as soon as you send word of the birth." After the colonel left, Silas went to the backyard to give Benedita the news. She was sitting in the shade of a mango tree, peeling potatoes for supper. "It's decided. After the baby is born, you'll go to Colonel Sterling's estate." Benedita simply nodded, but inside her heart raced. She had been waiting for this confirmation to put into motion the most dangerous part of her plan. "May I know when they'll take me?" "As soon as you recover from the childbirth, about 10 days after the birth." "I understand. Thank you for letting me know, sir." Silas found her calmness strange, but he said nothing. He returned to the house concerned about the preparations for the sale. That night, Benedita did not sleep. She walked silently to the woods where she used to meet with the other women. There, buried beneath a centenary tree, lay her most precious treasure, a small wooden chest she had hidden months before. Inside the trunk were all the coins she had managed to save in secret. During the month she tended to the neighbors, some patients insisted on giving tips directly to her, hidden from Silas. She had pretended to refuse, but always ended up keeping the coins. Now she had nearly $2,000 hidden away. Besides the money, the trunk contained seeds of the rarest medicinal plants she had found, some recipes written on thick paper, and a letter she had asked the neighbor's son to write. The boy knew how to read and write, and she had dictated an important message. "Now is the time," she murmured to herself, caressing her belly. The following morning, Hattie sought out Martha in the kitchen. "I need you to help me with something very important, but it has to be an absolute secret. You can count on me. When the baby is born, I'll need you to take a letter to the city's registry office. It's to formalize some documents." Martha's eyes widened, not understanding. "What kind of documents?" "Documents that will change my life and my son's life forever." Over the following days, Hattie appeared calm, but she was finalizing every detail of her plan. She had discovered that Silas had a specific debt of $800 with a loan shark in town, a man named Thomas Miller who lent money at high interest rates. In the early hours of Saturday, Hattie felt the first labor pains. She woke Martha and the other women who were already prepared to help her. The labor was long, but without complications. At dawn, a healthy, strong boy was born. "What will you name him?" asked Martha, holding the baby in her arms. Samuel Freeman." The women found the full name unusual, but they asked no questions. Hattie had that determined look they already knew. Silas was notified of the birth and came to see the baby. It was a beautiful child with fair skin, with features that seemed familiar. He felt a strange pang in his chest, but pushed aside any inconvenient thought. "In a week you'll be strong enough to travel," he said to Hattie. "Yes, sir. 1 week." That same day, Martha set off for the city with Hattie's letter and very specific instructions. She was to find Thomas Miller, the loan shark, and deliver the correspondence in person. Thomas Miller was surprised to receive a letter from a bondwoman. When he opened and read the contents, his eyes widened in astonishment. The letter read, "Mr. Thomas Miller, I've learned that the farmer Silas Harrison owes you $800. I can settle this debt in cash in exchange for a favor. I need you to go to his estate and tell him that an anonymous benefactor has settled the debt. In return, he must give me the manumission deed for myself and for my son. The money is enclosed. If you accept, keep 10% of the amount as a commission. Hattie. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Along with the letter was a pouch with exactly $800 in gold and silver coins. Thomas Miller counted the money 3 times, incredulous. How had a bondwoman managed to save that much money? But the offer was too good to refuse. He would earn $80 for doing almost nothing, and he would still get back the money he had lent to Silas. The next day, Thomas Miller arrived at the estate on his horse with a mysterious air. Silas, I have some strange news for you. What news? Your debt to me has been settled. Someone paid the $800. Silas nearly fainted. That's impossible. Who would do such a thing? I don't know. The person wanted to remain anonymous, but they left a strange condition. What condition? You must give a manumission deed to a bondwoman named Hattie and to her son. Silas sat down heavily in the chair, trying to understand what was happening. Hattie? The healer? The very same. It's very strange, isn't it? Why would someone pay your debt to free a bondwoman? Silas sat in silence for long minutes, processing the information. Who could this mysterious person be, and why specifically Hattie? If I don't grant the manumission, what happens? Nothing. Your money has already been paid, but it would be ingratitude not to honor the request of someone who saved you from ruin. Silas knew he had no moral choice. Someone had paid his biggest debt, saving his lands from foreclosure. Denying the only request made in return would be dishonorable. All right, I'll prepare the documents. That afternoon, Silas sent for Hattie. She came walking slowly, still recovering from childbirth, carrying the baby in her arms. Hattie, something very strange has happened. Strange how, sir? Someone paid a very large debt of mine. In return, they asked that I grant manumission to you and your son. Hattie's eyes widened, feigning surprise. Manumission? But who would do such a thing? I don't know. The person didn't want to be identified. Do you have any idea who it could be? No, sir. I don't know anyone with that much money. Silas watched her closely, looking for any sign that she knew more than she was letting on. But Hattie kept a genuinely surprised expression. Well, either way, I'll honor the agreement. Tomorrow we'll go to the registry office to prepare your freedom papers. Thank you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. That night, Hattie could hardly believe her plan had worked. She was free. Her son was free, and she still had enough money hidden away to start a new life somewhere else. The next morning, Silas, Hattie, and the baby traveled to town to settle the paperwork at the registry office. The notary was prepared to draw up the manumission deed. Name of the bondwoman? The man asked. Hattie, Silas replied. Name of the son? Samuel. Surname? Silas hesitated. Freed bondmen usually adopted the surname of their former masters. Harrison, he said. But Hattie interrupted him. If I may choose, I want it to be Bennett. Samuel Bennett. The notary looked at Silas, who shrugged. Whatever she wants. The documents were signed and sealed. Hattie held the papers with her hands trembling with emotion. She was free. Officially free. When they returned to the estate, Silas was pensive. What are you going to do now, Hattie? I'm going to work, sir. Keep healing people. Here in the region? I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll go to a bigger city, where there are more opportunities. Silas felt strangely sad at the possibility of her leaving. He had grown accustomed to her presence, to her skill, to the security of having a healer on the property. You can stay here if you like. I can pay you a fair wage. Thank you for the offer, sir. I'll think it over carefully. But Hattie had already decided. She would stay only as long as needed to fully recover from childbirth and make the final preparations for her departure. Over the following weeks, she intensified her teachings for the women of the estate. She knew her departure would leave a void, and she wanted to make sure they would be prepared to keep helping one another. Martha, You have the best memory for the remedies. I want you to be the leader of the group. But Hattie, none of us has your experience. You have more knowledge than you realize, and if doubts arise, you can send me a letter. I'll leave you my address. News of Hattie's manumission spread through the neighborhood, causing mixed reactions. Some applauded the generosity of the anonymous benefactor. Others grew suspicious, finding the story far too strange. Colonel Sterling flew into a rage when he learned he would lose the purchase. "What do you mean she was manumitted? We had a deal." "Colonel, I could not refuse. Someone paid my greatest debt asking only this in return." "That is an insult. I want to know who this mysterious benefactor was." But no matter how much he investigated, Sterling could not discover the identity of the one who had paid Silas's debt. Thomas Miller maintained professional confidentiality. A month after giving birth, Hattie said goodbye to the estate. She had fully recovered her strength, and her son was growing healthy. Silas drove her to the nearest train station, about 2 hours away. "Where are you going?" he asked on the way. "To Williamsburg. I heard there are many opportunities for healers there. It is far from here. It is better this way, starting a new life in a place where no one knows me as a bondwoman." During the journey, Silas felt compelled to ask a question that had been troubling him for weeks. "Hattie, may I ask something personal?" "You may." "Who is Samuel's father?" Hattie looked at the baby sleeping in her lap, then fixed her eyes on the road ahead. "Someone who will never claim that paternity. It is better that Samuel grows up without knowing." Silas swallowed hard. There was something in the tone of her answer that deeply troubled him. At the station, Hattie bought a ticket to Williamsburg with money she said she had saved. Silas did not question where so much money had come from, but he found it strange that a former bondwoman had the means to travel by train. "Take good care of yourself," he said as they parted. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Silas. You have been fairer to me than many others would have been." She boarded the train, carrying only a small suitcase and the baby. Silas remained on the platform watching the train pull away until it disappeared over the horizon. During the journey, Hattie finally allowed herself to relax. She had done it. She and Samuel were free. They had money to start over, and she carried with her valuable knowledge that would always guarantee her livelihood. In Williamsburg, she rented a small but comfortable house on the outskirts of town. She began treating neighboring women with minor ailments, charging fair prices. Her reputation grew slowly but solidly. 3 months later, she received a letter from the estate. It was from Martha, sharing the news. "Dear Hattie, everyone here misses you. The crops are doing well. Mrs. Abigail remains healthy with the teas you taught us to make. Mr. Silas always asks about you. Sometimes he stands looking at the backyard where you used to tend the plants. The women here keep gathering and using what you taught us. We have already saved 3 babies with breathing problems and cured several people with your remedies. You have left a great legacy for us." Hattie smiled reading the letter. Her plan had worked better than she expected. The knowledge she had planted in those women was flourishing. In Williamsburg, she established a productive routine. In the morning, she treated patients at home. In the afternoon, she visited families who needed special care. At night, she studied medicinal plants she found in the region, always expanding her knowledge. Samuel was growing strong and healthy. Hattie spoke to him in English and also taught him some words in the language she had learned from her grandmother. She wanted her son to know his roots, even if he never knew the whole truth about his origins. 6 months after arriving in Williamsburg, Hattie received an unexpected visit. It was Silas Harrison, who had traveled to the town to find her. "Mr. Silas, what a surprise to see you here. Hattie, I needed to talk to you." She invited him into the small living room of her house. Silas looked around, impressed by the organization and cleanliness of the place. In the corners, he saw several medicinal plants growing in pots. "How did you find out where I was?" "Martha gave me your address. She said you two exchanged letters." "That is true. How are things at the estate?" "Well, the debts are paid, production has improved, but I miss you." Hattie was surprised by the frankness of the confession. "I miss your help with the sick, your wisdom, your presence at the estate," he continued. "Nothing has been the same since you left. You have the other women. They know much of what I taught them. It's not the same. You had something special, Hattie. They were silent for a few moments. Samuel was playing on the floor with some wooden toys Hattie had bought. Actually, I came here to make you a proposal, Silas said. What kind of proposal? I want you to come back to the estate, not as a bondwoman, but as a partner. A partner? We could start a business together, a kind of rural hospital. You would tend to the sick, and I would provide the structure and the resources. We would split the profits. Hattie was intrigued by the proposal, but wary. And why would you do that? Silas hesitated before answering. Because I learned to respect you, Hattie. I learned that you are an extraordinary woman, with knowledge that can help many people. And also because... He stopped, as if he didn't know how to continue. Because why? Because I think you know who the mysterious benefactor who paid my debts is. Hattie's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. Why do you think that? Too many coincidences. That person specifically requested your manumission. You had money to settle here. You didn't show any real surprise when I told you the debt had been paid. Hattie stared into his eyes for a long moment. Finally, she decided to be honest. And if I did know, what would change? Nothing. Actually, it would only increase my admiration for you. Admiration? Hattie, you are the most intelligent person I have ever met. If you truly planned your own freedom, it only proves I was right to want you as a partner. She stood up and walked to the window, looking at the busy street outside. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But does it matter now? No. What matters is the future. Hattie thought about the proposal. Returning to the estate would mean being close to her friends, to the plants she knew, to the place where Samuel was born. But it also meant risks. I need guarantees. What kind of guarantees? I want everything officially documented. Our partnership, my share of the profits, my right to leave whenever I want. All right. And I want Samuel to be recognized as my heir in any business we undertake. Silas agreed, even though he didn't understand why she insisted on that last point. There's one more thing, Hattie said, turning to him. I want your wife to agree to our partnership. I won't work in a place where I'm not welcome. Mrs. Abigail already agreed. Actually, it was she who suggested I come find you. Really? She said it was you who saved her life, and that it would be an honor to have you as a partner at the estate. Hattie was moved by Mrs. Abigail's change of attitude. The woman who once viewed her with distrust now genuinely respected her. Very well, Mr. Harrison, I accept your proposal, but with one final condition. Go ahead. Don't call me just Hattie anymore. My full name is Hattie Bennett, and I want to be addressed as Mrs. Bennett in business. Silas smiled and extended his hand. You have a deal, Mrs. Bennett. They shook hands, sealing a partnership that would change not only their lives, but the entire region around the estate. A week later, Hattie returned to the estate with Samuel. But this time she arrived as a free woman, head held high, carrying her own bags, and was received at the manor house as a special guest. Mrs. Abigail welcomed her with genuine warmth. Mrs. Bennett, it's so good to have you back. I missed you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Abigail. I'm happy to be here. Silas had prepared a comfortable room for her and Samuel in the manor house, not in the slave quarters as before. It was a large room with windows facing the garden, furnished with a bed, a cradle, a wardrobe, and a writing desk. This will be your office as well, Silas explained. Here you can see patients with more privacy. Hattie could hardly believe the change. Months earlier, she had been that man's property. Now she was his partner in a business that promised to be very prosperous. In the first month after her return, they made the partnership official at the town's registry office. The document established that Hattie would be responsible for all medical treatments, and Silas would handle administration and infrastructure. The profits would be split 50-50. News of the partnership caused a scandal throughout the region. Many landowners found the idea of a white man going into business with a former bondwoman absurd, but others, more practical-minded, saw an opportunity to gain access to effective treatments for their families. Colonel Sterling was one of the most vocal in his disapproval. Silas, you've lost your mind. How can you lower yourself to do business with a Negro woman? Colonel, Mrs. Bennett is a competent professional. Our partnership is purely commercial. This is going to cause trouble, you'll see. But the trouble Sterling predicted never materialized. On the contrary, Hattie's fame as a healer spread quickly. People came from distant estates seeking her treatments. She established regular consultation hours, charging varying prices according to patients' financial circumstances. The wealthy paid more, the poor paid less, and in extreme cases, she treated people for free. The activity at the estate grew so much that Silas built a small building attached to the manor house, specifically for Hattie's medical consultations. The space had a waiting room, an examination room, and a laboratory where she prepared her remedies. "We're making more money from your treatments than from the sale of coffee," Silas remarked after tallying the accounts for the third month. "The coffee is doing well too. Your plantations have improved since we adopted some of the techniques I suggested." It was true. Hattie had taught methods of crop rotation and companion planting that increased the productivity of the coffee groves. The estate was more prosperous than it had ever been. With her financial success, Hattie began investing in her own education. She hired a private tutor who came twice a week to teach her to read and write better. She wanted to commit to paper all the knowledge she carried in her memory. "Why are you studying so hard?" Silas asked one night, finding her writing by lamplight. "Because knowledge without record is lost when a person dies. I want to have everything documented for future generations." "What kind of documentation?" "A complete manual of traditional medicine, with recipes, dosages, indications, contraindications, something that can teach other people." Silas was impressed by the ambition of the project. That would be like writing a book. Exactly. A book that could help many people in the future. The idea of Hattie writing a book excited Mrs. Abigail, who offered to help with editing the texts. The two women, who once barely spoke to each other, now spent hours together working on the manuscript. "I never imagined I would learn so much about medicinal plants," Abigail confessed. "It's fascinating how each herb has its own specific properties. My grandmother always said that nature has a remedy for everything. We just need to know where to look." The book project gave Hattie new motivation. She began researching plants in the region she didn't know well yet, experimenting with new recipes and documenting the results. Her medicinal garden grew until it occupied a considerable area at the back of the estate. Samuel was also growing up quickly. At age 2, he was already walking steadily and speaking his first words. Hattie made a point of taking him along whenever she went out to gather plants, teaching him about nature from an early age. "This is pennyroyal, Samuel. It's for stomach aches. And this is lemon balm, which helps you sleep better." The boy absorbed everything with natural curiosity, touching the plants carefully and repeating the names his mother taught him. Silas watched these scenes with growing interest. There was something about Hattie's patience and devotion to Samuel that moved him deeply, and he began to notice physical similarities between himself and the boy that left him unsettled. One afternoon, while Hattie was seeing a patient in her office, Silas stayed outside to look after Samuel in the garden. The boy was playing with small twigs and leaves, imitating his mother as she prepared remedies. "Uncle Silas, look, I'm making medicine." "What medicine is that, Samuel?" "For headaches, Mommy taught me." Silas smiled, but deep down he felt troubled. With each passing day, the similarities between him and Samuel became more evident. The shape of the eyes, the way he smiled, certain gestures. That night, after Hattie put Samuel to bed, Silas sought her out in the study. "Hattie, I need to ask you something that's been tormenting me." She looked up from the manuscript she was writing. "Go ahead and ask." "Samuel, does he look anything like me?" Hattie stared at him for a long moment before answering. "Why do you ask?" "Because I have eyes. I see how he is, how he acts, and some memories." "What memories?" Silas took a deep breath. "I remember a night, a few months before you arrived here. I was very drunk, having money troubles, and I did things I regret." "What kind of things?" "You know what kind of things. Things men do when they think they have power over other people." The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. Hattie went back to writing as if she wanted to end the conversation. "If you're asking whether you're Samuel's father, My answer is still the same. It's better that he grows up not knowing. But I have the right to know. Right? Hattie looked up again, this time with a hard expression. What right does someone have who forced a situation? Silas hung his head, ashamed. You're right. I have no right at all. But can I try to make up for the mistake? How? By making sure Samuel has every opportunity that my own son would have. Education, inheritance, recognition. Without revealing paternity? If that's how you prefer it, yes. Hattie closed her notebook and stared at him firmly. Fine, but I want everything documented legally. If anything happens to you, Samuel has to be protected. Leave it to me. The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Silas began treating Samuel with even greater affection, always respectful toward Hattie, never crossing the professional boundaries she set. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, above all, subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Months later, word of Hattie's fame reached the mayor of Williamsburg, who came personally to the coffee estate to meet her. Mrs. Bennett, I've heard that you're writing a book on traditional medicine. That's true, Mr. Mayor. The city government would like to support this project. We could publish the book officially, distributing copies to other towns. The offer moved Hattie deeply. Her book could help people across the entire region, spreading knowledge that had previously existed only in oral tradition. It would be an honor, Mr. Mayor. There is only one condition. We'd like you to give some public lectures, teaching the main concepts to other healers. Public lectures? Yes? In the town square, so that everyone could attend for free. Hattie grew nervous at the idea of speaking to large audiences, but she agreed. It was a unique opportunity to spread her knowledge far and wide. Hattie's first lecture was a historic event in Williamsburg. Hundreds of people gathered in the central square to hear an ex-bondwoman speak about medicine. The audience included poor and rich, white and black, men and women. My brothers and sisters, she began, her voice clear and strong. I came here today to share knowledge I received from my grandmother, who received it from her grandmother in a chain that must not be broken. The audience listened in respectful silence. Hattie spoke about the most common medicinal plants, their uses, preparations, and necessary precautions. She demonstrated massage techniques to relieve pain and explained basic principles of hygiene to prevent disease. At the end of the lecture, she received a warm ovation. Several people approached to ask specific questions and request personal advice. The success of the first lecture led to invitations from other towns. Hattie began traveling throughout the region, always accompanied by Silas and Samuel, bringing her knowledge to communities that had never had access to proper medical care. On one of these trips, they were invited to an estate near Lynchburg, where a fever epidemic was devastating the local community. The town's doctors could not control the situation, and people were dying. Mrs. Bennett, please help us, pleaded the local landowner. We've already lost 20 people in the past 2 weeks. Hattie examined several patients and quickly identified the symptoms. It was a fever caused by contaminated water and poor sanitary conditions. First, we'll isolate the sick. Second, we'll treat the water you've been drinking. Third, we'll prepare a specific remedy to lower the fever and strengthen the body. For 2 weeks, Hattie worked tirelessly, applying her knowledge to fight the epidemic. Silas helped her by organizing the distribution of remedies and coordinating care for the sick. The outbreak was brought under control, and only 2 people died after Hattie's arrival, compared to the 20 who had died before. The community received her as a heroine. How can I thank you for what you've done for us? Asked the landowner. By learning the techniques I taught and teaching them to others. Knowledge only has value when it is shared. News of how Hattie had controlled the epidemic spread throughout the province of Virginia. She began receiving invitations from government officials, universities, and medical institutions. The dean of the Capital Medical College invited her for an official visit. Mrs. Bennett, your methods have drawn the attention of the scientific community. We would like to officially document your techniques. It would be an honor, Mr. Dean. There's a proposal that might interest you. How about teaching an official course at our college on national traditional medicine? The idea of an ex-bondwoman teaching at a university was revolutionary for the time. Some professors protested, but the faculty administration maintained the invitation. "I accept, but with conditions," said Hattie. "What conditions?" "I want half of the course openings reserved for poor people, especially women who already work as healers in their communities." "That's irregular." "It's my only condition." The dean agreed, realizing that Hattie's course would be a historical milestone either way. The National Traditional Medicine course, taught by Hattie at the Capital Medical College, lasted 3 months and attracted students from across the country. Among the participants were trained doctors, medical students, traditional healers, and midwives. "The medicine I learned doesn't compete with doctors' medicine," she explained in the first class. "They complement each other. Each one has its place and its importance." During the classes, Hattie demonstrated techniques for preparing natural remedies, diagnostic methods based on observation of symptoms, and above all, the importance of prevention through healthy habits. The success of the course led other universities to invite her to give similar lectures. Hattie was becoming a nationally respected figure, something unthinkable for a woman who had been a bondwoman just a few years earlier. Silas followed her entire journey with growing admiration. "Hattie, you're changing the world." "I'm not changing the world, Silas. I'm just planting seeds. Other people will reap the harvest." "And Samuel, how is he handling all these trips?" "He's learning a lot. He sees other cultures, other places. That will make him a better man." Samuel, now 4 years old, really adapted well to the trips. He had learned to behave in different social environments and naturally absorbed the knowledge his mother shared. On one of the trips, they passed by the estate where Hattie had been born. It was a rundown property, with the main manor house in ruins and the lands abandoned. "Was this your home as a child?" asked Silas. "Where I was born, yes. But it was never my home. Home is where we feel free and loved." "And where do you feel at home now?" Hattie looked at Samuel playing in the garden of the inn where they were staying, then smiled at Silas. "Wherever I can use my knowledge to help people, and where my son can grow up free and proud of his origins." Back at the estate, Hattie resumed the project of finishing her book. She had accumulated so much material during her travels that the original manuscript had turned into 3 different volumes, one on medicinal plants, another on healing techniques, and a third on disease prevention. "This is going to be a monumental work," commented Mrs. Abigail, helping with the revision of the texts. "I hope it will be useful for future generations." The publication of Hattie's 3 books caused a national impact. They were the first works to systematically document traditional American medicine, written by someone who had practiced this knowledge her entire life. The imperial government commissioned 1,000 copies for free distribution in hospitals and medical schools across the country. Hattie was now officially recognized as a national authority in her field of knowledge. With the money from the books and the partnership with Silas, Hattie decided to invest in an even more ambitious project, a school of traditional medicine. "I want to create a place where people like me can officially learn traditional healing techniques," she explained to Silas. "A school just for that. A school that graduates licensed healers, officially recognized. That way, those who practice traditional medicine will no longer be seen as charlatans." Silas enthusiastically supported the project. They bought a large plot of land near the estate and began construction on a school that would be unique in the country. The Hattie Bennett Academy of Traditional Medicine was inaugurated 2 years later, with the presence of provincial authorities and representatives of the imperial government. The event marked the official recognition of traditional medicine as a legitimate discipline. In her inauguration speech, Hattie was moved when speaking about her journey. "7 years ago, I was considered someone else's property. Today, I inaugurate a school that will bring knowledge to thousands of people. This shows that in the United States, with determination and hard work, anyone can change their destiny." The audience gave her a standing ovation, including many who had once scorned her for her origins. Samuel, now 6 years old, cut the symbolic ribbon alongside his mother. He was an intelligent and curious boy, already showing interest in the knowledge Hattie passed on. "Mama, when I grow up, will I be a healer too?" "You'll be whatever you want to be, my son. But always use your knowledge to help people." The school began operating with 20 students in its first class. They came from different regions of the country, people who already practiced traditional medicine in their communities and wanted to deepen their knowledge. Hattie established a 2-year curriculum, including theoretical classes on medicinal plants, practical techniques for preparing remedies, basic notions of anatomy and hygiene, and above all, ethics in patient care. "Always remember," she told her students, "our role is to relieve people's suffering. Never charge more than the patient can afford, never promise impossible cures, and always respect the limits of your knowledge." The school's success attracted international attention. Doctors from other countries began visiting the United States to learn about Hattie's methods. She received invitations to give lectures in France and Germany, but preferred to focus her efforts on developing traditional American medicine. "My place is here," she explained to Silas when he suggested she accept the international invitations. "The United States still desperately needs what I can offer." The partnership between Hattie and Silas evolved beyond business. They became genuine companions, united by mutual respect and their care for Samuel. Although they never officially married, they lived as a family in many ways. Mrs. Abigail also became fully integrated into the family dynamic. She had become one of the school's main supporters and a second mother to Samuel. "I never imagined that a former bondwoman would change my life so much," she confessed to a friend. "Hattie taught me that a person's worth is not in their origins, but in their character." At 10 years old, Samuel was an exceptional boy. He spoke Portuguese, some words in an African language that Hattie had taught him, and was learning Latin with a private tutor. He knew more about medicinal plants than many adults, and showed a natural gift for healing. "Samuel has a special gift," commented Silas, watching the boy make a tea for a sick neighbor. "He has knowledge passed down with love," corrected Hattie. "That makes all the difference." The school prospered and had already graduated 3 classes of certified healers. They worked in different regions of the country, bringing standardized traditional medicine methods to underserved communities. The social impact of Hattie's work was evident. Childhood disease rates in the regions where her former students worked had decreased significantly. Mortality in childbirth had also dropped dramatically. The imperial government began considering making the traditional healer profession official, creating a legally recognized category. Hattie was invited to join the commission that would draft the rules for this new profession. "Mrs. Bennett, your opinion will be essential for us to create fair and effective legislation. I'm honored to participate. I always dreamed of seeing traditional medicine officially respected." The commission's work lasted 6 months. Hattie fought to ensure that the new regulations would not exclude traditional healers who had been practicing for years without formal training. She wanted there to be opportunities for everyone to demonstrate their skills. "We can't discard valid knowledge just because the person didn't have the chance to study in a school," she argued. The final law established 2 categories: certified healers, trained in schools like Hattie's, and traditional healers, who could obtain a license through practical competency exams. The approval of the law was a historic milestone. For the first time in the United States, traditional medicine was officially recognized as a legitimate profession. At the law's signing ceremony, the august sovereign made a point of personally greeting Hattie. "Mrs. Bennett, your contribution to this country is invaluable. History will remember your dedication to elevating traditional American medicine." "Thank you, Your Majesty. I hope this law helps many people gain access to adequate medical care." After the ceremony, Hattie returned to the estate a transformed woman. At 35, she had become one of the most influential women in the country. Her school trained dozens of professionals annually, her books were studied at universities, and her reputation reached the remotest corners of the United States. Silas watched her entire journey with genuine pride. "Hattie, when I think about how you got here, as a pregnant bondwoman bought for a few pennies, as an extraordinary woman I was fortunate enough to meet." They were sitting on the terrace of the manor house, watching Samuel play in the garden with the estate workers' children. The boy treated everyone as equals, something Hattie had always made a point of teaching him. Silas, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret buying me at that auction? Silas laughed softly. Hattie, that was the best decision I've ever made in my life. Not just because of the financial success, but because I met you and had the chance to be part of Samuel's upbringing, even knowing you were tricked. Tricked how? You thought you were buying a weak, useless bondwoman. Actually, you were buying someone who would completely change your life. I wasn't tricked. I was blessed. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a messenger bearing an official letter from the state government. Mrs. Hattie Bennett, the Governor of Virginia, has the honor of inviting you to receive the Medal of Social Merit in recognition of the services you have rendered to the people of Virginia. The medal ceremony took place in the state capitol, attended by the leading local officials. Hattie was the first former bondwoman to receive such an official honor. In her acceptance speech, she spoke about the importance of giving everyone the opportunity to develop their talents. I received this medal not only in my name, but in the name of all the people who were considered inferior because of their origin or skin color. May this recognition inspire others never to give up on their dreams. Samuel, now 12 years old, watched the ceremony with visible emotion. He was beginning to fully grasp the importance of his mother's work and how exceptional her journey was. Mom, I'm so proud to be your son. And I'm proud of the man you're becoming, Samuel. Back at the estate, Hattie decided to expand her school even further. The project now included a teaching hospital where students could practice under supervision, caring for real patients. Construction of the hospital began the following year, funded by the school's profits and donations from admirers of Hattie's work. It would be the country's first hospital specialized in traditional medicine. During the construction, Samuel showed an interest in being part of the project. Can I help with anything, Mom? Of course. How about starting by organizing the medicinal plants library? Samuel dedicated himself to the task with impressive seriousness. He catalogued hundreds of species, creating detailed records with descriptions, medicinal uses, and preparation methods. His work was so well done that Hattie decided to include him as an official collaborator at the hospital. The teaching hospital was inaugurated 2 years later, becoming a national reference center for traditional medicine. Patients came from all states to receive treatment, and medical students from traditional universities did internships to learn about alternative methods. This place represents everything I believe in, said Hattie on opening day. Scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom working together to heal people. The hospital's success definitively consolidated Hattie's reputation. She had created a legacy that would continue impacting lives for generations. At 15, Samuel already showed exceptional maturity and knowledge. He decided he wanted to study formal medicine at the university to complement the traditional knowledge he had learned from his mother. I want to be a bridge between the two worlds, he explained, the medicine of books and the medicine of the heart. Hattie fully supported her son's decision. You will carry our wisdom into the universities, Samuel. That is very important. Silas offered to pay for all of Samuel's studies at the best medical school in the country. It's the least I can do for the son of the woman who changed my life. Samuel was accepted into the Capital Medical College with exceptional grades. During his studies, he developed a thesis on the integration between traditional medicine and academic medicine, which caught the attention of renowned professors. While Samuel studied in Washington, D.C., Hattie continued expanding her work. She created a scholarship program for children of former bond people to study at the traditional medical school, ensuring that ancestral knowledge would not be lost amid social changes. Education is the only real form of freedom, she said. I want all children to have the opportunities Samuel had. The scholarship program was an extraordinary success. Dozens of young black men and women received professional training and became respected healers in their communities. It was a silent but profound revolution. At 40, Hattie was recognized as one of the most important women in the United States. She had transformed not only her own life, but had influenced significant social changes throughout the country. Silas, now 55, publicly took pride in his partnership with Hattie. She taught me that a person's worth is not in their origins, but in their contribution to the world. He would declare, whenever questioned about his partnership with a former bondwoman, Mrs. Abigail, at 60, had become one of the leading advocates for women's rights in the region. "Hattie showed me that we women can be the protagonists of our own story," she used to say. Samuel graduated in medicine with highest honors and returned to the estate as a licensed physician. His thesis on integrative medicine was published and adopted as a reference in several universities. "Now I can officially work by your side, Mother, and we'll do even better work together, my son." The partnership between mother and son brought a new dimension to the teaching hospital. Samuel introduced modern equipment and scientific techniques that perfectly complemented Hattie's traditional methods. Patients began to have access to treatments that combined the best of both medical worlds. The results were impressive, with cure rates higher than those of conventional hospitals. "You are creating a new model of medicine," commented a visiting professor from a German university. "This should be studied internationally." The fame of Hattie and Samuel's integrated work spread beyond the borders of the United States. Doctors from other countries began coming to study their methods, and the school received invitations to establish branches abroad. But Hattie preferred to consolidate the work in the United States before thinking about international expansion. "Our country still needs us very much," she explained. "Let's refine what we have here first." At 45, Hattie decided to write her memoirs. She wanted to document her entire journey, from servitude to national recognition, to inspire others in difficult situations. "My story can show that anyone can change their destiny," she told Samuel, who was helping her write. The book, From Servitude to Science, Memories of a Healer, became a publishing phenomenon. It was the first autobiographical book written by a former bondwoman in the United States and caused an international impact. Hattie's memoirs were translated into many languages and studied at European universities as an example of overcoming adversity and scientific contribution. "Mom, you've become a symbol," Samuel commented after hearing that the book was being studied in France. "I don't want to be a symbol, Samuel. I want to be an example. Symbols stay on pedestals. Examples inspire others to act." While writing her memoirs, Hattie publicly revealed for the first time some details of how she had won her freedom. The revelation that she herself had paid her debts to Silas caused a national sensation. "Mrs. Bennet, did you plan your own liberation?" asked a journalist from Washington, D.C. "I planned my future. Freedom isn't given, it's won." The revelation further increased admiration for Hattie's work. She had demonstrated not only medical knowledge but also exceptional strategic intelligence. Silas, when asked about having been tricked by Hattie, reacted with good humor. "If that was a trick, it was the best trick of my life. Hattie taught me more about dignity and hard work than anyone else." The school and the hospital founded by Hattie became models for other regions of the country. Several states requested help to establish similar institutions, always with Hattie as chief consultant. At 50, she had become a nationally respected figure, consulted by government authorities on public health and education policies. "Mrs. Bennet, your opinion on creating a national health system would be very valuable," said the Secretary of Health during an official visit. "I believe any health system should include both modern medicine and traditional medicine," she replied. "The two complement each other and together can better serve the population." Her recommendations were partially incorporated into government policies, marking the first time traditional medicine was officially considered in national health guidelines. Samuel, now 25, had become a renowned physician for his integrative methods. He married Sarah, a nurse trained at Hattie's school, and they had 2 children. "Grandma Hattie, tell the story of when you were a bondwoman," asked the 5-year-old granddaughter during a family Sunday. "Once upon a time there was a woman who was born without freedom, but she discovered that true freedom is here," Hattie replied, pointing to her own head, and here, pointing to her heart. The children listened fascinated to their grandmother's stories, learning from an early age about the importance of education, hard work, and perseverance. Silas, now 65, remained Hattie's partner and loyal friend. He had never remarried after the loss of Mrs. Abigail, preferring to devote himself to projects in partnership with Hattie. "You've formed a very special family," Sarah commented, observing the dynamic among Hattie, Silas, and Samuel. Sometimes the true family is the one we choose, Hattie replied. The traditional medicine school had trained more than 500 professionals in 20 years of operation. Alumni worked across the country, bringing standardized and ethical methods to underserved communities. The teaching hospital served more than 1,000 patients per month and received medical students from all over the continent. It had become a continental reference in integrative medicine. All of this started with a pregnant woman bought for a few pennies, Samuel reflected one afternoon, observing the intense activity of the medical complex his mother had created. No, Samuel, Hattie corrected. All of this started with knowledge passed down by a loving grandmother and with the refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. At 55, Hattie decided it was time to partially retire. She would hand over the school's leadership to Samuel, but would continue as a consultant and professor emerita. It's time for the new generation to take over, she said during the transfer ceremony. Samuel is prepared to carry our work into the future. At the retirement ceremony, representatives from all over the country attended. Alumni, cured patients, government authorities, and fellow physicians paid tribute to the woman who had revolutionized traditional American medicine. Mrs. Hattie Bennett transformed not only medicine but our understanding of human potential, stated the Secretary of Education. She proved that talent and dedication can overcome any social barrier. In her farewell speech, Hattie spoke about the importance of continuing to fight for equal opportunities. My story should not be seen as an exception, but as a possibility. How many other talented people are wasted because of prejudice and lack of opportunity? Our work must continue until everyone has the chance to develop their gifts. After retiring, Hattie dedicated herself to writing a series of educational books for children, teaching basic principles of natural medicine in a playful and accessible way. I want future generations to grow up knowing traditional medicine from an early age, she explained. The children's books became very popular in primary schools, introducing concepts of preventive health and respect for nature in a fun and educational way. Samuel took over the school's leadership with exemplary competence, expanding the courses offered and establishing partnerships with international universities. Under his leadership, the institution became a world reference in integrative medicine. Sarah, his wife, developed specialized training programs for midwives and traditional nurses, expanding the social impact of the family's work. Samuel's children, Grace and Oliver, grew up immersed in the environment of integrative medicine. From an early age, they showed interest and aptitude for continuing the family legacy. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to help people like you," Grace would say. "And you can help in many different ways, dear. The important thing is always to use your talents to do good." Silas, even at an advanced age, remained active in managing the farm business and the medical complex. His dedication to the family he had built with Hattie never diminished. "Silas," Hattie said on a quiet afternoon, "thank you for giving me my first opportunity." "Hattie, thank you for turning an opportunity into a miracle." At 60, Hattie received an honorary doctorate from the University of Virginia, becoming the first former bondwoman to receive such an honor in the United States. "This title represents not only my work, but the recognition that knowledge and wisdom can come from any background," she said at the ceremony. The university also established a permanent national traditional medicine chair in her honor, ensuring that her teachings would continue to be passed down academically. Samuel was invited to hold the first chair, consolidating the academic recognition of the family's work. "Mama, now our traditional medicine is officially in the universities," he said, emotional. "This is what I dreamed of from the very beginning, Samuel, that our knowledge would be respected and studied scientifically." Hattie's legacy continued to grow even after her retirement. Former students from her school held important positions in hospitals, universities, and government agencies across the country. The integrative medicine she had pioneered in the United States was becoming a model for other Latin American countries. Medical delegations from various nations regularly visited the complex she had founded. "What would you say to a young bondwoman today who dreams of freedom?" asked a journalist during a special interview. "I would say that freedom is won through knowledge and hard work. that she should not accept limitations others try to impose, and that she should always believe in her own potential, even when no one else does. At 65 years old, Hattie decided to make one last special journey. She wanted to visit the estate where she had been born, to see what had become of the place of her origins. Samuel and Sarah accompanied her on this emotional trip. The old estate was now owned by a family that cultivated coffee using sustainable methods. "This is the room where I was born," said Hattie, stepping into the old slave quarters, now a museum preserved by the new owners. "How do you feel coming back here?" asked Sarah. "I feel gratitude. Everything I lived through brought me to where I am today, including the difficult moments." During the visit, Hattie planted a seedling of medicinal herb on the spot where her grandmother Clara's garden used to be. It was a symbolic way of connecting past and present. "This plant will grow free, just as I grew," she said, carefully watering the seedling. The trip marked a moment of inner peace for Hattie. She had closed a chapter, returning to her roots as a free, respected and fulfilled woman. Back home, she devoted herself even more to her grandchildren, passing on not only medical knowledge, but above all values of dignity, hard work and compassion. "Grandma, do you think I can do important things like you too?" asked Oliver, who was 8. "You can do even more important things, my dear. Each generation has the opportunity to go further than the one before." Grace, at 10 years old, was already showing a special interest in medicinal plants. She would spend hours with her grandmother, learning about different herbs and their healing uses. "That girl has the healing gift in her blood," commented Silas, watching Grace prepare tea for her sick doll. "She has interest and dedication. With proper guidance, she could become a great doctor." The family gathered every Sunday for lunches that stretched into the afternoon. These were moments for sharing stories, planning projects, and strengthening family bonds. Hattie watched these gatherings with deep satisfaction. She had created not only a professional legacy, but a family united by love and common purpose. "Samuel, you all gave me the greatest joy a person can have," she said one Sunday. "What joy, Mama?" "Seeing that my work will continue through you, but in an even better way." The school run by Samuel had established exchange programs with European and North American universities. American students went to study traditional medicine in other countries, and foreign students came to learn American methods. "We are exporting knowledge that was once scorned," commented Samuel with pride, "and importing wisdom from other cultures to enrich our work," added Sarah. The teaching hospital continued to grow and had become an internationally recognized research center. Several important discoveries about American medicinal plants were published in international scientific journals. Silas, at 70, remained mentally active and physically healthy, largely thanks to the preventive care he had learned from Hattie over the years. "You keep me young, Hattie," he would joke during their daily walks through the garden. "We keep each other young, Silas. Companionship is the best medicine for old age." At 70, Hattie received an unexpected proposal. The US government wanted to put her face on a commemorative coin, honoring her contribution to national medicine. "It's a tremendous honor," she said, "but I would prefer the tribute to be a permanent scholarship for underprivileged young people who want to study medicine." "Why not both?" suggested the secretary responsible for the proposal. And so the Hattie Bennett Scholarship was created, a government program that offered full funding for medical studies to low-income youth. The commemorative coin was also minted, making Hattie the first former bondwoman to have her image on US currency. Samuel took over the administration of the scholarship, ensuring that the funds truly reached those who needed them. "Mother, in 5 years we've already trained 50 doctors through the scholarship. And how many of them are serving underserved communities?" "All 50. It was one of the conditions for receiving the scholarship." Hattie smiled with satisfaction. Her dream of democratizing access to medicine was coming true on an even broader scale than she had imagined. Grace, now 15, had decided to pursue medicine and was already studying intensely for the college entrance exams. "I want to practice traditional medicine like Grandma, but also modern medicine like Daddy," she declared. "You're going to be an even better doctor than the two of us," Hattie would prophesy fondly. Oliver, at 13, showed an interest in administration and talked about modernizing the management of the school and the hospital in the future. "Someone needs to take care of the business side so you can focus on medicine," he would say, with impressive precociousness. The family had become an example of how knowledge, unity, and purpose can create lasting and impactful legacies. At 75, Hattie still kept a sharp mind and relatively good health. She continued seeing a few special patients and mentoring young students of traditional medicine. "Experience is what allows us to make connections that others cannot see," she explained to her students. During a special consultation, she received a patient who moved her deeply. She was a young, pregnant bondwoman brought secretly by an abolitionist family. "Dr. Hattie, can you help this girl? She's having complications with her pregnancy." Hattie examined the young woman with special care, seeing her own story reflected in those frightened eyes. "What's your name, dear?" "Alice, Mum." "Alice, you're going to be fine, and so will your baby. But you need to trust me." During the treatment, Hattie talked at length with Alice about possibilities for the future, education, and the importance of never giving up on her dreams. "Dr. Mum, is it true that you were also a bondwoman?" "It is true, Alice, but that doesn't define who you are or what you can become." Alice's baby was born healthy, and Hattie helped the abolitionist family arrange freedom papers for mother and child. "One day, when you are free and settled, pass this knowledge on," said Hattie, teaching Alice some basic childcare techniques. The encounter with Alice reignited in Hattie the desire to do even more for the less fortunate. She created a discreet program to help enslaved people at risk, always working with abolitionist families in the region. "I cannot save everyone," she would say to Samuel, "but I can save those who cross my path." The program helped dozens of enslaved people gain their freedom and establish themselves with dignity. It was dangerous work, but Hattie felt obligated to give back for the opportunities she had received. Silas fully supported these activities, even knowing the risks involved. "If we don't do our part now, when will we?" he would ask whenever someone questioned the wisdom of helping fugitive bondmen. The estate became a discreet stop on the abolitionist route, offering medical care and guidance to people seeking freedom. Clara coordinated a network of women who provided clothing, food, and forged documents to facilitate escapes. It was risky work, but it saved lives. "We're making history, even if no one knows it," Samuel would comment about the family's clandestine activities. Grace and Oliver grew up watching their parents and grandmother help those in need, developing a strong sense of social justice from an early age. "Why do we help people we don't even know?" Oliver once asked. "Because one day, someone helped your grandmother when she needed it," Samuel explained. "And because it's the right thing to do." At 80 years old, Hattie remained mentally sharp, but her physical health began to decline. She accepted the limitation with serenity, focusing on passing down her final teachings to the family. "The time has come for me to prepare for my departure," she said calmly during a family lunch. "Don't talk like that, Grandma," Grace protested. "Dear, life has cycles. To be born, to grow, to contribute, and to depart. I've done my part well. Now it's your turn." Hattie spent her final months organizing her personal papers, finishing one last memoir, and recording video testimonies for future generations. "I want my great-grandchildren to know my voice and my words when they grow up," she would explain. Samuel carefully documented all of his mother's final teachings, ensuring that no knowledge would be lost. Silas, at 85, remained by the side of his lifelong companion, caring for her with the same dedication she had always shown others. "Hattie, thank you for turning my life into something meaningful. Silas, thank you for giving me the chance to show who I truly was." End of story. Now tell us, what did you think of Hattie's incredible journey of transformation? Do you believe that determination and knowledge can truly change anyone's destiny? Leave your thoughts on this inspiring story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching narratives.